What is up, Fantasyland? Welcome to an annual tradition right here in the GOAT District. What is up, Fantasyland? Welcome to an annual tradition right here in the GOAT District. Every year, Dan and I bring you a couple of legends in Fantasyland, two of the most respected, high-stakes, high-volume players around. Today, Noah Ruddel and Mark Garcia are here to reveal their biggest fades for the 2023 season. So grab yourself a Java, sit back, and let's get.
GOAT District, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? We are clearly having some tech issues this morning. I don't know what's going on with StreamYard, but we appreciate you guys tuning in. We're gonna hustle right through it, just like it's draft season, man. You hustle through it. You might have too many draft boards up on your screen, too many notifications. You don't even remember which draft you're actually drafting in or picking in by the time it's back to your turn. Dan, we got our annual tradition. This is the biggest show we do going into the season. We bring in two of the best, and we identify players that you're probably going to want to fade. And if you haven't faded them in Dynasty, this gives you the opportunity to maybe trade them away.
Yep, absolutely. This is one of my favorite episodes to do as well because first off, we got Mark and Noah's going to be joining us momentarily. Noah's out catching fish with his kids, and he caught one so big that it took him extra time to reel it in. So, but we're going to help you do the same thing for your fantasy drafts. We're going to help you catch players so big that it takes extra time to reel them in, and we're gonna help you throw back the little guys too. So it's going to be a ton of fun.
It is. And you see him at the bottom of the screen, Mr. Mark Garcia. You probably know him as Hilo out there in the fantasy land. Buddy, how you doing? We're so pumped to have you back today.
Dude, I'm doing great, and thanks for having me back. This is the funnest show by far all year, and every time I hear your intro, it just pumps me up.
Dan, you got to warn me on those. We've got it's a little iffy on the StreamYard this morning. So I'll fix it. Let me just I'll get the comments on. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Joanna, love seeing you. What is that? Pity 83 says it's the best annual tradition show in Fantasyland. We appreciate that. And whether you're watching this now or watching this later, smash the like, smash the subscribe. That's the best way you can help us out. You guys have been awesome. We're almost at 1,000 subs on YouTube. I got no words, Dan. It's unbelievable the fact that we're still doing this after 7 years now. Yeah, the beauty that is we get to finish off the off season with a little trip to Vegas. So if you're going to Vegas for the FFPC drafts next weekend, make sure you stop Dan, myself, Theo, Andrew, wherever you see us. We're going to be at the Planet Hollywood, where the action is, where the drafts are. Thursday night for sure. We'll be watching the game. And then I know, Dan, you've got a full schedule. I've got, I know I'm drafting with you guys, Andrew, Theo, and myself, or with yourself on Thursday morning. You and I have a main on the Saturday, I believe, as well. And then you've got like 49 other drafts in between that. Am I right? Am I close?
Yeah, you are very close. My dance card in Vegas is basically 100% full. So, but that's the way we like it. It's a lot of fun that way.
If you're gonna make the trip, right? And speaking of Vegas, we've got the squat machine himself. He's got his machine behind him. The man, the legend, Noah Ruddel. Buddy, appreciate you joining us today, man. Is he on? Is he maybe not set up yet?
Noah, can you hear us?
Maybe not.
I'm thinking
All right.
that.
We'll wait for that. We'll see when he kicks in. We'll leave him on the screen just to see if he's having issues with the internet or he's just not plugged in yet. But the goal today, guys, is to use the next 60 minutes and identify players that you've been fading this offseason. You guys are high volume, high stakes drafters, so you've been in a lot of draft rooms. I know, Hilo, I see some of the numbers you put up, especially out there on the underdog machine. You're definitely high volume. And let's start off with you, man. Let's start off nice and easy. Maybe one of your bigger fades this offseason where you're kind of planting the flag, as they say.
Actually, I'm going to go the other way with it, man, and I'm going to give you one that is probably going to ruffle some feathers, and that's Philadelphia Eagles tight end Dallas Goedert.
Ooh.
So I did a study this offseason that looking to find out how much or how correlated touchdowns are to fantasy production at each position. And I went into it thinking, honestly, that tight end was going to be the highest correlation, but it's actually quarterback. Tight end is second. But Dallas Goedert is a guy, you look at his past 3 seasons. I mean, last year, he saw a career-high 10 red zone targets. That ranked 15th in the league. The year before, he saw 6 red zone targets. And in 2020, he saw only 5 red zone targets. So this is a guy. And also you think about, or you talk about how his role kind of was influenced by the addition of A.J. Brown last year. His ADOT went from a very, very healthy 8.8 over 2020 and 2021 seasons down to 6.2 last year, which that ranked 29th in the league. So it's very clear that they are trying to maximize their best pieces. And now with Devontae Smith and with A.J. Brown in town, those best pieces, he kind of takes a tertiary backseat to those. And if he's not being utilized heavily as a mismatch option in the red zone, now we're talking about his weekly range of outcomes is going to be heavily influenced by that. So he's been one of my heavier fades this season, and that's probably against the grain a little bit.
Dan, my Jalen Hurts Goddard stackage FCP I'm building right now, it just does not like hearing that from a guy like Hilo. That's the one danger of having these guys later in the offseason. Maybe we got to get them on earlier next year. But yeah, I mean, do you have any thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, I think Mark's right on. I mean, basically, I can't tell the difference between him and Freiermuth, who's available 2 rounds later. So I'll just take the discount and take the cheaper guy.
Yeah, he's definitely not someone I've been drafting a lot this offseason, but when I do have the opportunity to stack him with Hurts, I have the very few times, and one, like I said, is in the FCP. Noah, can you hear us okay? You good? You with us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Awesome. Yep. We can totally hear you. Thanks for joining us today. I know it's a busy time of year for all of Fantasyland, especially in the high-stakes streets. Who's your big fade right now, or maybe has been this whole offseason even?
Well, I was telling Dan that if we had done this a week or two ago, I would have been able to say Jonathan Taylor, because he's a guy that I've taken almost none of this year. Now things are different because he's falling to the 6th or the 7th. I've actually started to draft him some in the 7th round now that you can get him that late. Especially, it really depends on the format. In a confined league, I'm still not going to take him if you're just playing against 12 other people, or whatever size your league is, and you're trying to take down the championship, I'm still not going to draft him in that format. But if we're talking about these tournaments where 90% of the field has already drafted, and in all of those drafts, Jonathan Taylor went in the top 30 picks, I think it can make some sense. At that point, what you're betting on is for Jim Irsay to have a stroke at some point in the next 3 months. And that's maybe not a terrible bet. So if Jim Irsay has a stroke in the next 3 months and Jonathan Taylor then gets traded, you have a chance to really outdo your league mates, because he's a guy that's a first round value in fantasy if he's playing. But my base case is that he's not going to play this year, barring some miracle. So I've actually started to take him a little bit in broad tournaments where the field doesn't have exposure to him as late as he's available now.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair, and I think the idea is by the time you get to the 6th or 7th round, if a pick goes busto there, it's not going to totally kill your team.
Right.
Second or third round picks definitely do.
All right, Dan, I know you're going to be sniping. I feel like you're going to be sniping me because you named a guy last night that I was going to maybe use. Why don't you start with yours? If you want to start with the thumbnail, you can release, or you could keep that one for last. I mean, I'm sure people are dying to know which Falcons we're talking about today, but you might want to keep that for the end.
I'll hold that one out for a minute.
Keep people interested. Nice.
I'm going to start out with a running back here like Noah, and I'm going with Alvin Kamara. Even though his price really looks kind of attractive right now as he's going in the 6th, 7th round, and you can say, like I just said, it's not going to kill you if he misses. I just don't see vintage Alvin Kamara coming back ever again. 2017 to 2021, he was one of the greatest things in fantasy, and having it on your team was definitely a plus. We're looking at a totally different scenario now. Number one, he's missing 3 games to start the year, and if you're in one of those tournaments, that plays the first 12 to 14 games, and then you've got to get into a playoff by then. Missing the first 3 games is, it matters. So you don't like seeing that. Plus, it's a 3-headed monster back there now, which he's never had to deal with before. You've got Kendre Miller and Jamal Williams, and then you also have the extra head that comes in with Taysom Hill, who's often acted more like a goal line back than anything else, certainly not like a tight end. So he's got a lot of competition there for his touches and touchdowns. I just don't see how he can really get to the point where he's going to help you out that much. The offense has changed. Drew Brees is not back there throwing checkdowns all the time. Maybe Derek Carr will throw a few more checkdowns than Andy Dalton did last year, but still, I just don't see enough to make it worth my while drafting Kamara.
Anything to add, Mark, Noah, with regards to Kamara? I think it's tough for any of these guys that come in later into the season, right? You see JT and Kamara both for different reasons, but they're going to be starting actual game on the field experience is not coming until 5, 6, until we're a bit into the season. So that always kind of worries me with these running backs.
I would say that I think that Derek Carr is the check down king of all of the quarterbacks in the NFL right now that are starters. He's probably the one that's the most prone to check down. However, is that going to be Kamara? We don't know that that's going to be Kamara. That could very well be Jawan or one of the other guys. It could be Taysom Hill. But I do think that he checks down a lot. I was actually pretty high on Jalen Richard for a few years in Oakland and then in Las Vegas, just because I knew that he was going to get a whole lot of checkdowns in the offense with Derek Carr. So it might work out, but I do think that Kamara is getting a little bit long in the tooth, and they've drafted his replacement. We need to see how Kendre Miller's hamstring holds up after he's injured it in the preseason, but I think that's a good shout.
I'm going to stick to the running back position, and this is just maybe it's still the pain that I felt, not pain, but just J.K. Dobbins last year. I was kind of believing a bit more that he'd be back sooner rather than later. And I'm getting that same feel with a running back in Denver with Javonte Williams. I know the word is he's healthy, he's going to be ready. You're already starting to see a bit of in the headlines with Denver saying they're going to be limiting his snaps. You have P. Ryan there, who we've seen, handle a good enough load. I just don't know, especially in the early part of the season, what we're going to get out of Javonte, because I think like training and being in training camp and then being in an actual game situation where these 400-pound men are smashing you every single play. I think after you tore your ACL, your LCL, and your PCL, all three. I know it was week 4 last year, so the time is definitely a factor there. So maybe it's in his favor. But I don't know. How do you guys feel about Javonte at his cost? Right now, I'm trying to see where he's going. He's in where is he, Dan? Do you know off the top of your head?
It's like 8th, 9th round.
That's how little I've drafted him. Yeah, 8th or 9th round.
Yeah, and in an FFPC, he's going even sooner than that. He's been bumping right on up the draft boards. So.
Oh, actually, yeah, you're round. He's in the 5th round right now. Actually, according to Fantasy Pros. To me, like that's especially when you look at opportunity costs. Like, give me James Cook, give me Deontay. Give me London, Drake London, those kind of guys in that range.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to just make a blanket statement going into the year to fade every single running back coming off of an ACL tear, you would historically profit. Just based on the pre-injury hype that they receive. Obviously, most of the reports that we're going to see most of the time during the offseason are he's ahead of schedule, he's doing great, he looks awesome, his feet look great, he's running 23 miles per hour. It's like, we got that, but like historically, we know what the numbers are. We can expect a 20 to 25% dip in efficiency metrics. We can expect a dip in snap rate, opportunity share. So all those things, it's like, you don't need to play that game if you don't want to. There are other ways to win in this sport where if you just want to make a blanket statement, you should be profitable.
Yep, totally makes sense.
All right, Mark, you've regained. You're back in my good books after the Goddard pick.
If you take a guy like Javonte and you're trying to figure out the early weeks, and I like to take Jamal Williams a little bit later. Basically, if you do decide to go down that route, I think Hilo was saying that he can go in the 8th or 9th round. Well, if Javonte's in the 8th or 9th round, I'm interested. I'm not taking him in the 5th or 6th. But if he starts to fall and it's looking like he may be available, what I do is I'll take him and then I'll shore it up with a guy that's going to give me some guaranteed points early because Kendre Miller is out with a hamstring injury. Jamal Williams will probably get 70+% of the backfield touches the first couple of weeks. So he's a guy that I like to target on teams where I've got any kind of uncertainty at the running back position, where you can just say, hey, I'm gonna lock in a hyper productive first 3 weeks, and then that gives me time to figure out with these nebulous situations, okay, which guy am I going to be able to start the rest of the way once Kamara and Kendre Miller are back and Jamal Williams' role thins out a little bit.
And then that's the writer downer right there. It's if you can take them, you can take some of these guys, but you got to build around that. Dan, you and I, we talked about that when we took Jacobs, like in the 3rd round or whatever, when we built that team with Theo earlier this year. The main, actually, was that the main that we did, where we went Mahomes and Jacobs on that 2-3 turn?
Yeah. Yes.
But we talked about how that allowed us to build the rest of our team the way we did, and it's the same thing there. You can take Javonte if you really do believe in him, but you have to be aware that the beginning of the year you got to get one of these guys that Noah mentioned, like Jamal, one of these early season guys that we expect to get volume in the first few weeks. Right. Noah, who's another guy that you're fading this offseason?
I think this season is a lot different from seasons that we've had in the past. It's got some unique hurdles. So situations, I think, are more important necessarily than individual players. Teams like Arizona are not trying to win this year, and that affects a whole bunch of players on their team and then, potentials for trades to other teams. But, situationally, I would be worried about teams that are not very good that hold their own first-round pick. So Arizona players are on that list. They could very easily move on from James Conner in the middle of the season. They could very easily trade Marquise in the middle of the season. Just move on from him if they want to, because he's in the final year of his deal. He's actually in the 5th-year option year. And so they may not want to keep him on the roster if they can get any kind of pick for him. Now, if they let him go after the season, then he they could get a third round comp pick for him if he signs a big enough deal somewhere else, but that third round comp wouldn't be until the 2025 draft. So if someone offered them a third round pick in the middle of the season, they could very easily trade Marquise to another team. Another team that I'm concerned about with that is the Rams. So the last time the Rams had their own first round pick was 2016 when they spent it on Jared Goff. And for some reason, the Rams have traded away all their picks for years, but for some reason, the Rams have their 2024 first round pick. And situationally, if things aren't going well with the Rams this year, they could just say, hey, Stafford's neck is acting up again, and we're just going to shut a bunch of players down and, roll it back next year. But as far as a team that could be a surprise tanking for Caleb Williams' team, I think the Rams definitely could be one of those teams. So I'm a little bit trepidatious about drafting Rams players.
Yeah, and I think especially for me, Akers. Like Akers just scares me. Of course, the injury last year, and but the running back on a team that's not going to be too great. I mean, at least the aerial game, you think they're going to throw the ball because they're going to be behind again. How do you feel about?
Well, and specifically on Akers, this is the last year of his contract as well. Mm-hmm. So, guys in the final year of their contract when the team is in a transition could be traded, or just they could check out, what they've got in the rookies very easily if they want to see, hey, is Zach Evans a guy that we can build with in the future, or do we need to burn a franchise tag on Cam Akers? Because that's really the decision that they have to make at the end of the year. They want to burn their franchise tag on Cam Akers, or do they want to take a chance with one of their young guys? So all of those situations just need to be thought about.
Yeah, I don't mind, as far as the Rams, I think that they're going to go into the season trying to win. But, as Noah said, if things go south, that could change pretty quickly, because they've got a very fragile team in a lot of ways. But if everything goes right, maybe they could do well. But, the fragility definitely is a concern. That's been putting me off of Akers. Stafford, I take him late in best balls. You're not going to take him in a managed league. There's really no reason to. So.
But he's great, like in a super flex as your third quarterback. Yeah. I mean, at his price, you can grab him, and I grab Van Jefferson like literally the next round.
Oh yeah,
stacked together.
Sure,
It's super cheap. Yeah.
Yeah.
The issue that I have with that is that there's other quarterbacks that are cheaper that I've always liked more. So I don't think that I have Stafford on any of my leagues, because I could take a Sam Howell later, for example. Like Sam Howell's been a guy that's been my quarterback 3 in Superflex.
He's going a couple rounds ahead now of Stafford.
He is now? Okay, yeah. Well, that's I haven't drafted Superflex recently. I was doing a lot of Superflex earlier in the offseason, but haven't done Superflex since about 3 weeks ago.
I'm just double checking that because that was a FCP, Noah. So you may be correct. But yeah, Sam Howell goes in the 6th in super. Oh, you're actually right. I apologize. See, you can't argue with the legend, man. Dan, what am I thinking? So Stafford goes at the end of the 5th, and then Howell is like maybe 4 picks later in Superflex right now.
Howell should be going in front of Stafford.
Agreed.
I think there's not any dissension about that.
But see how he's going late in the 1 QB? He's going like a round and a half almost later. So I guess it depends on the draft. But I think valid point with the Rams there. Mm-hmm. Mark, did we get your second fade, or were you just piggybacking on? Were you just
No. I'll throw one out. Packers running back AJ Dillon. He is being drafted as if he has this like mega standalone value plus contingent value. So he's being drafted in like this tier where there's a lot of contributors on a weekly basis. While AJ Dillon will see snaps, I mean, he averaged 10.9 fantasy points, a career high in 2021 per game, and 9.9 last year. His efficiency metrics have been far below that of backfield mate Aaron Jones. And it's just this situation where it's kind of this holdover effect psychologically that 2 years ago we were drafting AJ Dillon because there was so much uncertainty with Aaron Jones. Last year we were drafting AJ Dillon because there was so much uncertainty with Aaron Jones. And it's like this year there's not really that same uncertainty. So he's being drafted. I mean, I'll talk about some mega sleepers at the end of the show that I would draft way ahead of AJ Dillon, who's going in the 9th, 10th round, and these guys are going undrafted.
I literally just was deciding between Treylon Burks and AJ Dillon in a fantasy pros. Ended up going Treylon Burks because I mean his value right now is just too sexy in my opinion, especially the fact that he's back on the field. But AJ Dillon is definitely an interesting one. Dan, I don't mind spending a minute on this one just because you get to that point, especially if you waited on running back a bit, and it's tough because, like Mark said, we have been drafting him as if he has that standalone value. Last year, towards the end of the year, he gave you like some pretty good production, close to the 20s, like high teens, for about 4 or 5 weeks. But otherwise, it's kind of frustrating, eh, Dan? Like, especially in a redraft where you got to put these guys in your lineup.
Yeah, for sure. In a redraft, it's hard to draft him. Basically, AJ Dillon's bull case is that they're just going to run the ball 100% of the time in Green Bay, which I really don't think is going to be the case. I think Jordan Love is going to surprise a few people. So I can't take Dillon where he's going. I'd rather take him a couple rounds later. At that point, I could start taking flyers on him, but he's been really hard to draft where he's been going.
Yeah, I mean, look, both Washington Commanders backs are going right around AJ Dillon. So Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson. You have guys like Rashad Penny. I mean, we'll save the player takey part of that, but like these guys have much more upside and a more established, save Rashad Penny, and a much more established role early in the season.
Yeah, for sure. And, the thing is, with the Washington guys, Robinson's probably going to be toting the mail for the most part, and Antonio Gibson chipping in around the sides. I mean, I can understand A.J. Dillon and Antonio Gibson being around the same place. I can't understand why Brian Robinson is there. He's not the most, electric back you're ever going to find, but he does everything pretty well, and I think he's going to get used a lot. So, those are definitely players I would take over A.J. Dillon.
Noah, A.J. Dillon or Dalton Kincaid for a little OTC?
Are we in a FFPC draft, or is this
FFPC, tight end premium.
Okay, Dalton Kincaid. It's probably Dalton Kincaid in non-FFPC too.
Yeah.
But one thing that I would add there is that the Packers were willing to trade for Jonathan Taylor, and they were willing to give up a third-round pick for Jonathan Taylor, and they were planning to pay him $17 million per season in a deal. So if that gives you any idea of what the Packers think about A.J. Dillon, I don't think that the Packers have A.J. Dillon as being anywhere comparable to JT. So, I definitely agree with that shout. As far as where he's going, I would much rather have either Robinson or Antonio Gibson in that same price range. And then there's some other guys. It used to be you could get Khalil Herbert at that same spot. Khalil Herbert went in that same range, and I was taking Khalil Herbert every time. But, now there are still other guys that I'd be more interested in. I might even take Jaylen Warren over A.J. Dillon just for potential upside. So take that for what it's worth.
Yep.
All right, Dan.
All right.
Give us a fade, brother. I know, just to add, just really quick, I was going to say those Washington running backs, just to piggyback on Mark, they're like the safety net for the running back position, like especially if you wait late, because if you get one of those two guys, it kind of saves. They can be your RB2, they can be your RB1 and like a zero RB, and they're really nice RB3s, RB4s. But yeah, those Washington guys are nice pickups.
I think they're going to split the work about 50-50. So
preseason you should
similar opportunity.
Yeah, and it was more just basically rotating in. It was less situationally than I think we thought coming into the season. The offseason reports were Antonio Gibson will be J.D. McKissick plus role. It did not look like that in the preseason. They were basically just taking a set of downs and rotating through and keeping each other fresh. So that's very interesting in a Eric Bieniemy offense, as we expect that the backfield unit as a whole to be kind of involved in that gadgety player. Last year we saw Mecole Hardman start in that role, and then it became Jerick McKinnon when Hardman got hurt. So that role this year is probably the running backs as a whole, and then Curtis Samuel as well.
Yep, definitely. All right, I think it's time we get to our thumbnail player here. We're going to have the big reveal on the Atlanta player to fade. I'm definitely fading Kyle Pitts. First off, let me say, love the talent. If you don't love what the talent is, you're not doing fantasy football right. But you got to listen to what the coaches are telling you. And his preseason utilization matches pretty much what last year's frustrations were. He's only en route on a little over 50% of dropbacks. And, to see that still happening in the preseason, that's concerning. You can paint a story where you can say, well, they're taking it easy on him because he, was coming off a knee issue last year. Maybe that's the case, but maybe not. They weren't using him in 21 personnel. He was only getting used about a third of the time in 11 personnel. Atlanta, I think, is probably going to play a good amount of those. He does play a lot in the 12 personnel. I think that's also going to be a big part of the package. I think those are probably going to be the three packages they use the most. But, it's still, if I'm taking a tight end that high, I don't want to be guessing and hoping and everything else. I mean, I would rather just take the sure thing. Either take Waller or Hawkinson or somebody like that a little bit earlier, or just drop down and take Freiermuth several rounds later, because it's the odds are that Pitts is going to end up pretty close to Freiermuth in the end anyway if he stays healthy. So why not just take the discount? So I'm fading Pitts.
Yeah, that was an easy game all offseason until about 2 weeks ago, when you could just take Darren Waller after all of these guys that have so much uncertainty. But yeah, it's a little bit more difficult now. We mentioned all those guys behind in a tight end premium format, or even in just a PPR or half PPR format. There's a guy going way late that we mentioned earlier in Tyler Higbee, who is probably one of the only 5 tight ends that we expect to surpass 100 targets this season. And he's going 4 rounds later.
All right.
Yeah, I think it'll be really fun if you're a Kyle Pitts owner watching him pass block on behind the line of scrimmage targets to Matt Collins. It'll be just pure bliss watching Matt Collins get targeted behind the line of scrimmage, and Kyle Pitts is out there, lead blocking and holding on to somebody and getting a holding call and then back it up 16 yards.
Didn't he get hurt?
Yeah.
I thought he got
Matt
hurt.
Collins?
Yeah. No?
No, he's still the starting number 2 receiver.
All right.
Yeah.
Harry Snowman liking Dan's Pitts. So there you go. That's the Falcon that Dan is fading. I'm gonna go back to the running back position. I don't know. Again, opportunity cost. A guy going in the 6th round, Miles Sanders. I know Dan doesn't agree with this. I know a lot of Fantasyland like his spot in Carolina. I don't know. He was 4th in red zone touches last year, 8th in carries, finished RB 21 points per game. I just don't see a very high ceiling with him. You've got Chuba Hubbard there. Cody Carpentier was reporting from training camp that Laviska Shenault is going to be a factor in the running game. There's packages specifically for him in this offense. I just feel like Sanders never necessarily lived up. He had, one great season, I guess. He had a pretty good season, but I feel like he's never really lived up to what we expected, and I don't know that that's going to happen in Carolina. So I don't know. How do you guys feel about it? I'm not excited about Sanders. It's opportunity cost for me. I way prefer guys, like I said earlier, like James Cook, even Rashad White, who's in that range. James Conner, David Montgomery. I prefer most of those guys over Sanders.
I think it's depends on the build for me. Miles Sanders is a guy where he has a somewhat wide range of outcomes with respect to his expected volume. I mean, we've seen reports that say he's going to be a 3-down grinder. We see reports that have said that the other running backs have looked good. We've seen the reports about Laviska. So there's a relatively wide range of outcomes. And if I'm betting on that situation towards the upper end, as in the range of outcomes as far as volume goes, I want it to mean the most on that roster, which means that he would be a guy that I would mix into 0 RB builds, or maybe even hero RB builds. Because if he hits on an upper range of outcomes as far as volume goes, he's going to hit hard and he'll have a clearer path to top 12 numbers at the position. If he finishes at a 70% outcome, 80% outcome even as far as volume goes, in that offense, he's highly unlikely to return value. So he's a very easy fade on a team where I've invested significant capital in running back already.
Yep.
Noah, let's go back to you, buddy. Give us a big fade. It's either a fade or a squat, whichever one you prefer.
I'm not really set up for squats right now. I mean, it's just set up for bench.
We could get a bench. That's not good.
So I don't really have many other big fades. I think it would be reasonable if you wanted to fade the whole running back situation for the Jets. If you wanted to just fade those guys and target passing options instead, I think that would be reasonable. I don't think the Jets are going to be some transcendent great team. I think some people expect that, but I think they might be more of a 8 or 9 win middling team, which means maybe target their receiving options a little bit better. So if you wanted to fade the running backs, that'd be fine. I do like Dalvin Cook going in the 8th or 9th round, just because I think Aaron Rodgers took a pay cut to get in there, and Aaron Rodgers is going to want him to play. So I am a fan of it. I like Breece Hall as a player and as a talent, but he's going to have to share the workload, and how big is that workload really going to be? I think a lot of people forget that Nathaniel Hackett is the OC in New York, and how quickly we forget how bad things went last year for Nathaniel Hackett. So I know Aaron Rodgers makes for great deodorant, but how much can he fix the problems that are probably going to be inherent to the way that offense functions?
Yeah, I think you could almost call Breece Hall the Kyle Pitts of the Jets. Tons of talent, just not sure he's going to get the utilization he needs to pay off his price.
Yeah.
I mean, you could get Izzy for free. just kind of hold him and hope he gets an opportunity. But yeah, I mean, it's been hard with Breece Hall because he hasn't moved down much. Like, he's still in that 4. He's gone down a couple rounds, but I mean, especially with Dalvin going there, I'm surprised he hasn't moved down a bit lower.
Yeah, I was hoping for 6th round, and I would have been a lot more interested in the 6th round. Yeah. A couple of times I've gotten him in the 5th, but other than that, I just haven't been prioritizing picking him, even though he's a guy that I think is really good when he plays. His top speed is still 23 and a half miles an hour. He's a guy that can really break long runs when he gets opportunities. It's just, will those be commonplace, or will they be few and far between?
Yeah, I'll echo that as well.
Yep.
Guys, make sure you check out myffpc.com. The draft rooms, like I mentioned last show, are on fire right now. I mean, they're loading up real quick. They're filling. They've got them all day, morning, afternoon, night, late into the morning. Best ball, redraft. You've got an eliminator tournament right now with a 350 buy-in. You've got the BBT for $200,000. You've got the main event for $1 million. You've got the fantasy pros for $1 million. Use the code GOAT if you're not on the site yet. The best site to play fantasy football, and you'll get a sign-up bonus. And I'll add a little bit of this for the next week. If anyone signs up to the FFPC and they use the code GOAT and they can show me proof, they'll get the sign-up bonus. I'll throw in a $77 credit as well on top of that. First come, first serve. So if you're not already signed up to the site, and if you are already signed up, if you can show me that you got a friend to sign up or something like that using the code on the site, we'll hook you up with a $77 credit for the FFPC. So if you add that, you'll get a nice about $100 that you can start with on the site, which gives you plenty to play with. If you've got,
I think my wife just got interested in fantasy.
There you go.
She needs an account.
There you go.
all 6 of my kids are preparing to sign up.
Yeah. I got all these friends in my house.
I'm gonna have Garcia and Ruddel as I'm like, what the heck are these names? Like,
who are these people?
Dan, we have our first female listener. Sorry, Joanna, I'm joking. Yeah, I know you've been with us for a long time, and we love you. We appreciate you. But I just joke because when you look at the stats, it's not very high on the female audience. I don't know, Dan. Maybe I need to grow the hair out. I don't know.
I don't know.
I've got an inverse trap.
I think the podcast numbers are higher because they don't have to look at us, but That's
Probably
kind of
true.
where I'm at.
Probably true. Sorry,
I've
Noah.
got an inverse trap if you're interested in that.
Do it.
Um,
Do it.
There's a trap out there that thinks that the Cowboys are going to be less efficient, that their offense is going to take a step back because they moved on from Kellen Moore. And I think that is a significant trap for people to fall into. I think the offense becomes more efficient, play volume decreases just slightly because they're not going to be playing as fast as they have in the past, but that their efficiency is going to be even better. This is the only offense in the NFL that was top 3 in points per game each of the last 2 seasons. And I think that they'll be top 5 again this year. And some of the players, some of the reasons why they really made a mistake when they let go of Amari Cooper, that was a personality problem, basically. They didn't like some of the things that he refused to do. He's a guy that plays by his own drum. And the last straw for Jerry was that Amari refused to get the vaccine, and then that caused him to miss games because basically the protocols were different for people who had the vaccine than for people who did not. And Jerry got really upset with him over that. But they made a mistake letting him go, and they tried to rectify that during the season last year when they tried to trade for Brandon Cooks, but the Houston Texans fumbled the paperwork and the trade didn't make it through before the deadline. And people in the organization were very upset about that. They thought that cost them a chance at a Super Bowl because basically last year CD was the only guy that they could count on. Gallup wasn't healthy enough. All the other guys that they had brought in, like James Washington, didn't work out, weren't healthy enough. And so their offense kind of got bogged down a little bit just because they didn't have somebody like Amari Cooper or Brandon Cooks that could be a dependable outlet for Dak, especially once they had the offensive line injuries and he had to get the ball out quicker and didn't have somewhere where he could send it. But I think Brandon Cooks is a guy that you can get in the 8th round, and at the end of the year, we're going to look at him versus Devonta Smith and think that they have the same numbers. And you can just, if you want Devonta Smith, you can take him in the 8th round instead of the 2nd round if you're really interested in that.
Damn. See, this is why you tune in to this show right here, just for that nugget. I haven't heard that anywhere. I do agree with the offense. I love the Cook take. Mark, you have anything to that?
No, I think that's super sharp. I've been targeting that offense pretty relentlessly this season. While I agree they are likely to see a dip in play volume, the pieces that they have, and with Dak now, with the options that he has, even across the roster, all the way down to a guy like Jake Ferguson, who I think was for a while my highest exposure of any player this season. I think he's down. I have him around, I think, 29% now. But yeah, he's a guy. It's like that offense. If people are going to be drafting like only Tony Pollard and only CeeDee Lamb, like there are other options that are extremely talented. Brandon Cooks being one of them, and Jake Ferguson being another.
Yeah, Prescott going in the 11th round. Like if you don't touch a QB until double digits in a 1 QB, that's pretty sweet value in my opinion. I think he's one of the best values at quarterback. Dan and I think have a couple builds going with him right now.
Oh yeah,
especially if you pair him up with upside like Richardson or something like that. Geno Smith, that's pretty lethal combination. Now let me ask you guys this. Let's go OTC here before I talk about my guy. I'll go to you first, Noah, before you give us a push up with those plates there. Mike Williams or Drake London?
Mike Williams.
Oh wow, I guess my
Every time.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
That's why when you put the headline, the poster of an Atlanta player and covered the number, it's like it could be either number 8 or number 5, either one.
Dan, our teams are not going to like that. We got big bags of Drake London.
I have big bags of Drake London, and I'm not apologizing for it. So I
yeah,
don't
same.
mind that at all.
What about Mike?
I do have some Mike Williams, but I've lost faith that he can play a full 16 at this point.
Yeah, sure. If it's an injury situation, I mean, the question should have been Mike Williams versus Keenan Allen. I think that's a better question.
You mean at price, and that's why you prefer.
No, I mean in a vacuum.
In a vacuum.
Oh,
so
okay.
you like Mike Williams better than Keenan Allen? Just
slightly. And I think Keenan Allen might be a bigger injury concern than Mike Williams. So
Yeah, I have them both kind of equal on that. So
Same.
it seems like Keenan's the guy they've been moving around the formation a lot. So we'll see. I don't think you're going to be too disappointed with either one. Anytime they're playing, you're going to probably want them in your starting lineup.
Yeah, and I think a big part of the conversation today is I keep saying opportunity cost. Like, I don't really ever have a complete fade. You know what I mean? Like, there's especially, it's always dependent on price, roster build. These are guys that I'm drafting a lot less at their ADP versus other guys in that range. So for me, Mike Williams, like, I prefer London, I prefer Deontay, I prefer a lot of guys in that range. You're talking about a guy that's approaching 29, missed 5 games due to injuries last year, due to a bunch of strains. Like, I'd love to see him and Allen healthy, especially with Herbert, to see the max potential of that offense. I just don't know that we're going to get that from them. Maybe I should be higher on Quentin Johnson, sounds like. But yeah, I'm like you, Dan. I'm not excited about Mike Williams. I was surprised, though, that Noah jumped on Mike and then Mark. So, again, I got to go back and relook at that. That's what I like about the shows.
Look at Mike Williams last year. Before he picked up his first ankle injury, he was like wide receiver 5 overall over the first 4 weeks, something like that. And this is a guy that has the upside. And yeah, I would agree. I've been drafting both of them, those wide receivers, and not drafting Quentin Johnson. That's just how I've been handling that situation. But yeah, I'll take either of them.
As of right now, I think Palmer is playing over Quentin Johnson in their 3 wide receiver sets. So I would agree that Quentin Johnson's price in drafts right now is highly speculative. You almost need an injury to one of the 2 main guys for that to get there. So
yeah, one of my least favorite when it comes to rookies out of this class, especially at the receiver position.
Oh yeah, give me Flowers in that range.
Flower, JSN.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now that JSN
Addison
is down in that range, yeah.
Yeah, and JSN maybe misses 1 game.
He might not even. He's already on the field.
Yeah.
Cyborg.
Give me JSN for sure.
Dan, give us another fade.
All right. I'm probably gonna make a few people mad, but I am fading T. Higgins. I just don't see it. His PPR finishes the last 3 years: 19, 24, 28. The most PPR points he's gotten is 221, and that
Minnesota internet is.
We lose Dan for a minute.
Somebody blew that big horn in the
Am I
stadium,
back?
and all the Wi-Fi just.
Yeah, you're back.
You're back.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm not sure where I faded out, but anyway, T. Higgins, his best PPR finish is 19, 221 points, and it required Jamal Chase missing 5 games to get there. He's going wide receiver 15. I mean, basically, when you're betting Higgins, you're betting floor. And I don't want to be betting floor at the point in the draft where he's going. I'd rather go draft a wide receiver 1 with a similar floor and a higher ceiling. So I just don't understand the T. Higgins love.
I'm on board with that one, I think. Look at his advanced metrics last year. Only an 18.6% target share, 22.3% targets per route run. And that was even with Jamar Chase, he missed just 2 games last year.
5.
Oh, it was last year he missed 5? Okay, cool.
Yeah, that Chase missed 5. Yeah. And
Higgins
missed a couple. Yeah, you're right. Higgins just, he kind of didn't play in a couple that he was active for.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. His ADOT, he's more or less the X type. They don't play a traditional like XYZ type offense. They do play a primarily 11 personnel base, but what I expect from Cincinnati is to see a less rigid offense going into this year. Because in the past, we've seen this kind of zero pre-snap motion. They didn't have this downfield type player because that player on their team is Jamar Chase. And they're not going to be like, we're just going to send you deep to manipulate safeties because you're Jamar Chase. They're designing him ways to get the ball in space over the middle of the field. So in the absence of this like downfield vertical player, they have needed to play a little bit more of a rigid offense. And why is that downfield player important in today's NFL? It's because cover 2 and 2 high defensive looks and alignments are kind of your base in the NFL in today's game. We saw this 2 years ago with Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow talking about, I'm trying to figure out how I solve cover 2. And Eric Bieniemy and Patrick Mahomes did that. They introduced this gadget player. They introduced all this pre-snap motion, and they have a guy, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who has led the team at the wide receiver position in snap rate, and that's the reason, because he's this downfield guy. He can manipulate safeties, and then the rest is kind of up to the quarterback's eyes, hips, positioning, all that stuff. The Bengals, they don't have that guy because they don't want to make Jamar Chase this downfield-only type guy, which is interesting. But what gives me, I guess, some hope in that situation this year is they were talking about installing more RPOs. They were talking about installing more pre-snap motion, which is one of those things you can do to influence safeties into high, because that strong side safety has more responsibilities than just his half of the field. He has to be worried about creeping down in the box against the run. He has to be worried about all these other things. So that's one of the ways where you can influence safeties. So I'm interested to see how that affects Jamar Chase and T. Higgins this year.
Awesome. That was a clinic right there.
Definitely a clinic. We don't call them legends for a reason. And I mean, Mark's been bringing the knowledge this Saturday morning. Hopefully, you guys have got your pens and papers out. I know these days it's more like an iPad or something with a keyboard. But
So real quick for everyone, T. Higgins or Chris Olave?
Oh,
Same range of ADP.
Yeah, Olave for me in a vacuum.
Olave for me.
Yeah, Olave, but I'm likely to go someplace completely different than both of those guys.
For me, it's just like you've got the one in an offense and the two in the other. I know their one's going to be throwing the ball probably way more. One is shown us. I don't know. I just feel like T, as much as I love T, he's one of my favorite receivers. I just think that when you're playing with Chase, you're always kind of capped. Your ceiling, meaning.
Right.
All right.
All right, let's see if we can get a couple more fades in.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we do this? Let's go around. If you have a fade left, drop it. And if you, whether you do or you don't, add a smash. Someone that you are drafting as often as you can, or that you think Fantasyland should be drafting as often as they can at this moment. We'll go to you first, Noah.
I'll just say a fade. I haven't drafted Deshaun Watson one time this offseason, and I don't plan to start. So I think that this is kind of a make or break year for the Cleveland coaching staff. I think if they can't make it work with Deshaun this year, that the coaching staff maybe gets fired, and I lean towards break, not make. They've changed to where the head coach is now going to be calling plays, and I don't think that necessarily means that they're going to be successful.
Do you have a smash, someone that you think people should be drafting as much as they can?
I mean, I kind of gave one earlier with Brandon Cooks at his price.
That's a good one.
I would also add Trey Flowers to that.
Nice.
I think Flowers should be up there.
Love it.
Mark, let's go to you for your last fade. If you have more than one, give it. And then if you have a smash.
Final fade now, currently where he's going, DJ Moore. This was a guy that was 4 or 5 turn, being pushed up to the 3-4 turn, and he's been paired around the same ADP as his quarterback. Obviously, we know why that is, but they've kind of been moving in tandem, and he's a guy where I took a little bit at the 5th round. I'm not taking in the 3rd, 3-4 turn. This is a guy, he's played 5 years in the NFL. He has 7 total weekly top 12 finishes at the wide receiver position in those 5 years. A fine redraft style pick. He's going to have an okay weekly floor, but we don't expect a ton of volume out of a Chicago pass offense. While I love the player, I don't necessarily agree with the price or the situation.
I think the question on him this year is how many behind the line of scrimmage targets can he turn into long touchdowns?
Yeah, exactly.
So
and he moved up.
Yeah, if the answer to that is 8 or 9, then he's a value at ADP. If the answer to that is 3 or 4, then he's not.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I know which way I'm betting on that.
Yeah. As far as
He's
Matt
good.
alluded to,
Yeah.
I alluded to earlier in the AJ Dillon discussion, guys that were going way, way later, that are on much better offenses, that are in the same archetype as AJ Dillon. The first is maybe Deuce Vaughn. He's like the tweener. But there's two more that are kind of bona fide on established top 5 offenses and are going to see work to begin the year and are not being drafted. The first is Joshua Kelly in LA for the Chargers. The second is Chris Evans, running back for the Cincinnati Bengals.
I love it.
I like
You've confirmed a couple of my biases there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Deuce Vaughn is going to play. There are people that don't think Deuce Vaughn's going to play because he's small. You know, I've brought it up before, and people say, well, he's the size of a high school freshman, so I'm not going to draft him. Like, okay, you're free to draft whoever you want. You can just, you know, sit in your puddle of wrongness and enjoy being wet. But he's going to play however much they feel like they need to play him in order to give Pollard rest. So, you know, maybe that's a drive in the second quarter and then a drive in the third quarter or something like that. He's going to kind of get his own drives. They don't think that he's just a space back. They don't think that he's just a guy that needs to catch the ball out of the backfield. They think that he's a guy that can run between the tackles just fine. He was the most productive running back in college the last 2 seasons. You know, no running back had more rushing yards between the tackles than he had at K-State. And they're going to play him, and, you know, we'll see what happens. We'll see if he can stay healthy at 157 pounds.
Dan, I'm going to let you go ahead of me. I'm afraid you might snipe me, but go ahead. It's all right. I can take it. I got backups.
Okay. I don't think I'm going to snipe you on this, but my final fade is going to be Kadarius Toney. You know, I know he's dropped a good bit in drafts, but still, I don't think he's dropped near far enough. He's played in only 19 games out of 34 possible games since he joined the NFL. He's been a wide receiver 1 once, a wide receiver 2 twice. Only 6 out of those 19 games has he even gotten over 10 points. Let's just stop trying to make fetch happen here, okay? Kansas City has tons of other wide receiver options. Some of them actually want to play football. I'm going to take one of them.
It's funny. I recently changed my tune on that just because his price, and I just feel the efficiency, that offense, it's still up in the air. As much as I really like Sky Moore, Dan, I just traded for Sky Moore with you on my one Patrick Mahomes team. Just the fact that he's on for every snap is huge for me. But I don't mind Toney in some builds, just kind of like that flyer. Noah, Mark, you guys got anything on the KC receiver who we'd love to see more on the field than off?
I was targeting Toney early because I was drafting on April 29th. So like the day after the NFL draft or whatever, April 30th, whatever it was. So I was buying into the uncertainty when I felt like the field was kind of trying to manage variance, where I was kind of just leaning into it. I tailored off after my first week of drafting, which I was able to get like 150 drafts in. It was a crazy week. And then I started taking him again now that he is kind of at his basement price on the off season. So yeah, I don't know. It's been a ebb and flow for me.
Yeah,
I would say that they're going to get some gadget touchdowns, and they're going to get some of those out of Toney. Last year, Jerick McKinnon led the NFL in receiving touchdowns for a running back. And, you know, is that going to happen again? Probably not. You know, maybe some of that goes to somebody else. But so I don't mind Kadarius Toney. I'm not going to draft him in a league where I have to manage and I have to actually choose to start the guy.
Totally.
But, you know, if you want to take some shots at ADP and best ball, I do that, especially on teams where, you know, there's a big tournament and I'm looking at trying to make sure I have a chance to win in week 17. So, you know, I'll stack up Bengals and Chiefs together because the two of them play week 17, and I'm looking for anybody that could have, you know, 2 touchdowns in that game. You know, so it's really based on what I'm trying to build for as far as if I'll go to Toney. For example, if I'm stacking up Chiefs and Bengals for that game specifically, and I don't have Kelsey, you know, if I didn't get Travis Kelsey, well, I'm taking Kadarius Toney late because what I need is somebody who's going to outscore Travis Kelsey on the Chiefs to get there, right? So just based on situation, that's what I'm looking for in that spot. But in a vacuum, I'm not taking Tony anywhere where I have to choose to start him. I'll throw some darts and best ball at him and Sky Moore, but you can take Patrick Mahomes alone and not worry about it if you want as well.
Mark, I know you have to jam. You've got a hard out, which we really, really appreciate you taking time on this Saturday morning, especially during the busiest weekend of the year. Good luck the rest of your drafts. I'm sorry we're not going to get to see you in Vegas. I thought I'd get to have it.
Yeah.
But we'll make that happen another time. And
Yes, sir.
yeah, man, just remind the peeps where you're at, the 33rd team, what you got coming up, lead analysts over there. We love what you're doing. Share any goodness you want before you walk out here.
Yeah, find me on Twitter at HiLoFF. Down there, you can see it on the ticker. Excuse me. Jumping into the NFL season, my primary home is oneweekseason.com. So go check out that if you're into DFS. Got a lot of cool stuff going there. We also have props that we drop there. And then any of the other kind of side hustles I got going. Yeah, the primary side hustle is 33rd team. But catch me on the First Mover, a Player Profiler Network. Every Monday, we'll be dropping stuff there as well.
That's right. I forgot you joined the Familia. That's right, man. You're probably... Noah's next, man. We got to get him a couple more squats, and then the Podfather will want him on for a health and fitness show or something.
All right, gents. Thanks for having me. We'll see
Thanks
you
a
guys.
lot, Mark. We appreciate it. All right, Dan. Who's your smash? Who's your smash, brother?
I'll take, and I know this is not going to come as a surprise to you, JD, but Kenny Gainwell. Just the coach loves him. When your coach shows up to a press conference wearing a T-shirt that's about you, after having signed Rashad Penny and traded for DeAndre Swift, I mean, it's just too classic. And he was very much trusted in the playoffs last year. He's going at wide receiver 44. Last year, they barely used him at all during the regular season. And he was
running back. Yeah, Dan froze.
We'll blame your internet connection on that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's almost... Yeah.
The Minnesota wins.
Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, he's a guy. You've got basically two guys in front of him, and they're only theoretically in front of him. We don't really know until the season starts. But when you're looking at DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny, they have spent basically their entire careers disappointing fantasy gamers. And Gainwell, I think, is just sitting in a prime position. If either one of them goes down for any reason, he's definitely the next man up if he's not already in front of them. So I just love the fact that he's the cheapest option there. Still barely cheaper than Penny, though that's about to flip, I think. But I'll keep taking him because he's nowhere near his ceiling for me.
Yeah, he's actually already flipped in. I just took him at the 10.08 in an FCP, the one where I have Hurts and Goddard. So you got to keep that Philly stack, especially he's catching the ball. I love stacking quarterbacks with their pass catching running backs. So RB 42, he went down kind of in that range that you mentioned. Where are you at with the running backs in Philly, Noah?
I like Swift. I take Gainwell probably the most of the three, just because a lot of the stuff that I'm still drafting is best ball, and I'm happy taking that guy. I do like Swift going in the 8th round, though. He's kind of creeped back along with Penny as Kenneth Gainwell has come up a little bit. But any one of those three guys could be the guy any given week. I lean towards Swift being the guy that takes the first carry the first game, and then, no holds barred. It's whoever the coach likes the best going forward, and I don't think that they particularly, care which guy that is. So I do take Swift from time to time, but as far as ownership goes, I probably have twice as much ownership of Gainwell as I have of Swift, and then a little bit less of Penny. I think the biggest fade out of this whole conversation is Elliott Shore-Parks, the beat writer for the Eagles, because anything that guy says is probably incorrect. It feels like he's a plant from Big Fantasy to get people to draft the wrong guy. So, he was the one that was saying that Trey Sermon was going to make the team and that he was going to be the running back over Kenneth Gainwell and over Rashad Penny. And pretty much every year, just follow that guy. Follow Elliott Shore-Parks and fade everything that he says, and you'll be profitable.
There you go. Hacks you'll never find anywhere else.
Yep.
Would you say
One
he's
weird trick.
Would you say? I had to get
He's
it
a
out
trap,
once. I had
for
to get
sure.
it out once. I'm surprised it took this long, but I know some peeps are not big on that. Let's give before I give mine. Let's give Joanna. She has a great question here. Redraft JT or Gainwell? I know JT's dropped down. I thought he was like in the 7-8 range, so maybe he's gone down lower. But if you're picking one or the other, which one are you leaning towards?
That's a wild question.
It is kind of, but yeah, they're not really at the same ADP, so it's not quite an either or question. But my answer is probably both. Given that you can get JT in the 7th, before that I'm probably not too interested. Given that you can get Gainwell, like in the 9th round or later, we'll say, and usually he's going later than that, then I'm taking both. I don't really have to pick between them, but I mean, if you're looking for a tournament, I'm probably going to JT. If you told me I could only have one or the other, I would probably take JT just for the tournament winning upside.
The value at that cost.
Yeah, JT is determined to never play another game for Jim Irsay. So the odds of him playing a lot more this year are pretty low, but if he gets late enough, you can take a chance on that. So
yeah, I don't have much to add. I like both, especially at cost. Dan nailed it. I think tournament, you got to lean JT. But Gainwell could surprise this year in a cloudy Philly backfield. I think you want like some of that backfield. You know what I mean? Whatever way you break it up, you want a bit of each guy. They've each had their turn going at value. My fade was actually just to go on Noah's Watson comment. Amari Cooper was a guy I was drafting early. I don't like that they brought in Elijah Moore. It's not as narrow when we talk target tree. He is a 29, low volume offense. They were 21st in pass attempts last year per game. And Njoku to me is like prime for a breakout. You could tell that him and Watson were building a little something there. So I think he gets a bit more targets. Not excited about that offense's passing game. So that's like for receivers anyways. I don't mind Njoku in some builds. And then my smash is a guy in the 4th round that I just can't stop drafting. Have a lot in my bag is Christian Watson. He gave you a run last year. I know he was 4th in TD, so people say, regression or all that, that kind of stuff. But I think the fact that as a rookie, he commanded that much target percentage in the red zone is one thing, or in the end zone. And you look at what he gave you from week 10 to week 13 against Dallas, Tennessee, Philly, and Chicago. So not a bunch of scrub defenses in the middle of the season. He gave you wide receiver 3, wide receiver 8, wide receiver 10, wide receiver 8. I think, like Dan said, I think Love throws the ball a bit more than people expect. I think that offense runs a lot better than people are expecting. I know Dan and I have been drafting a lot of Love, a lot of Watson in that offense. And I think in the 4th round, you look at the other guys going in that range. Yeah, whether it's Amari or DeAndre or DJ Moore, Watson right now is my preferred target in that range, and I'm excited for him in year 2.
The NFC North is going to be a points carnival this year. It really is. There's just bad defenses everywhere. So don't mind that at all.
So last year I had a whole lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was probably my highest owned player from rounds 4 through 8. My highest owned player was Amon-Ra St. Brown. And Christian Watson is my Amon-Ra St. Brown candidate this year. Like, nice. I have him just about everywhere. I wouldn't take Amari Cooper over him at all. I wouldn't take Keenan Allen over him. Yeah, and he usually goes, in the places I draft, Watson goes middle of the 4th, and Amari Cooper goes in the middle of the 3rd. He's a guy that I think his ADP is around 33 right now. So I don't have really any Amari Cooper because I don't think Deshaun Watson's going to have a very good year. But Christian Watson's a guy that I do have a lot of, and I also like some of the other guys on Green Bay. I like Luke Musgrave as a sleeper tight end a lot, and then there's another rookie receiver on Green Bay that I like a lot, but nobody else knows about him, and I just kind of sit there and go, well, I still want to draft this guy, but then he got injured in the preseason. I'm talking about Dontavion Wicks. I thought that Dontavion Wicks was a really good pick for them. I think I liked him better than Jaden Reed coming out. So Dontavion Wicks comes out and leads them in receiving in the first preseason game, and then injures his ankle in the second preseason game. So I'm like, but he did make the team, so we'll see what happens. But Dontavion Wicks, maybe a deep sleeper for later in the season.
Yeah, especially those dynasty leagues, guys. Write her down right there. All right, we've gone over the 60. We gave you guys a little bonus action. We walked Mark out already. Noah, we always appreciate you joining us. This year was a little kind of last minute. Dan squeezed this thing in on the last weekend. So next year we'll try to get you guys back in a little earlier, just so people can save their bags a little bit.
So we can fade Jonathan Taylor a little earlier.
Exactly. Imagine how much money you would have saved Fantasyland with that, 2 weeks ago. But no, we appreciate your input, man. You're always super sharp. There's a reason, you're one of the most respected guys that I can see in especially high stakes Fantasyland. You're in Vegas next week?
No, I'm not going to Vegas. I got too many local responsibilities where I'm at, but I actually have 3 more drafts today, so it should be a fun day, and then a couple more in the next 5 days, so it should be fun.
Well, good luck with those. Good luck with your season. I know we're in the DMs together, so I always try to catch a glimpse of who you're kind of on and off of when I can. But I'm sure the audience appreciated your input today. And guys, follow at Noah Ruddel on the Twitter machine. Dan, this was a blast. I know it's one of our favorite shows of the year. We've had a crazy off season, man. I know it's not done yet. Next week we're in Vegas, but we're at the end here. The last weekend for drafting, anyways, before Vegas. So pump those online drafts, guys. myffpc.com. Use the code GOAT. If you want to draft on Underdog, you don't have an account yet, use the code District. You'll also get up to $100 matched with that code on the Underdog, and they've got some beauties right now. They got a $350 buy-in. They've got the BBM, or what's that called? What is it, Dan? What's that? Their big one there for $25. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
The one Pat Crane one.
Best Ball Mania 4.
There it is. Yeah. Thanks, guys. I can't draft on Underdog up here, so unfortunately in Canada, that's it's a no-no. But use those codes. Good luck, guys, drafting. Dan, anything we've got? We've got tonight. Actually, we've got tonight on the Player Profiler Network. You're going to see our main event draft, right, Dan? It's going to be dropping tonight. Dan, myself, Theo, Andrew popped in for a bit. We did a main event draft earlier this week. It's going to be dropping at 6 p.m. Eastern on the Player Profiler Network, so make sure you check that out. Dan and I dropped a Owner's Lounge recently. Check that out on this very channel. And then there's a ball-in episode of the 125 buy-in BBT for $200,000, where I had one of the top rankers, Kevin Wheeler, and one of the best high-stakes best ball players, Eric Block, the Shiva, join me to draft one of those. We'll be dropping that on this channel later today. We appreciate you guys. Go smash those drafts, and we'll check you all later.
Go district, the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text. That trash offer's the best. You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.